Captain Lee Hyun stood in the empty control room of the human diplomatic station. The lights were dim now. Most of the equipment had been shut down. Tomorrow, this place would be silent forever. He looked at the star map on the wall. Red dots showed where human ships had traveled for the last 150 years. Blue dots marked the alien worlds they had helped. Green dots showed the research stations they had built. There were so many dots that the map looked like a galaxy, full of Christmas lights. But now all the human ships were leaving, all at once. All going to the same secret place. Dr. Park Soo-jin walked into the room. She carried a small box in her hands. Inside were the last of her research files that had taken her 30 years to create. The Maloney scientists came. "Bye again," she said quietly. "They want me to stay. They said they need my help with the bio-research project." Lee Hyun nodded. He had heard this story many times today. Every alien species was suddenly very interested in keeping humans around, but it was too late for that now. "What did you tell them?" he asked. "I told them the same thing I told the others. All my research is in the computers. All my methods are written down. They have everything they need." She paused and looked sad. "But they don't really want my research. They want me to keep doing the work for them. Just like always." In another part of the station, engineer Kim Do-woo was checking the power systems, one last time. These systems would keep running for many years without humans. He had made sure of that. He had spent the last 6 months making everything automatic. The Vorthon engineer Keth had watched him work. Keth never asked questions. He just assumed that Kim Do-woo would always be there to fix things when they broke. "The fusion reactors will run themselves," Kim Do-woo had explained to Keth yesterday. "The computer will handle all the repairs. You just need to change the fuel rods every 2 years." Keth had nodded and walked away. He did not seem worried. He thought machines could do anything humans could do. Kim Do-woo knew better. Machines could follow rules, but they could not think. They could not solve new problems. When something unexpected happened, the aliens would need to figure it out themselves. The decision to leave had not been easy. Captain Lee Hyun remembered the meeting where it all started. The Galactic Council had called for help with a big problem. 3 colony worlds were in trouble. Their environments were dying. Plants were not growing. Animals were getting sick. Dr. Park Soo-jin had studied the problem for months. She had found the answer. The aliens had been using the wrong farming methods. They were putting too many chemicals in the soil. The planets needed time to heal. "We need to stop all farming on these worlds for 5 years, she had told the council. "The people can live on other planets during that time. When they come back, the soil will be healthy again." The alien leaders had laughed at her. 5 years seemed too long. Moving people to other planets seemed too expensive. They wanted a quick fix. They wanted a magic solution that would not cost them anything. "Humans always make things sound harder than they are," said the Corvin representative. "We will find a better way." Dr. Park Soo-jin had tried to explain again. She had shown them data. She had drawn pictures. She had used simple words. But the aliens did not want to listen. That was 3 months ago. Last week, the first planet had started dying, faster. The second planet was not far behind. Soon, millions of aliens would have to leave their homes, just like Dr. Park Soo-jin had warned them. But even now, the council did not want to admit she had been right. Lee Hyun walked to his office and sat down at his desk. He opened the final report he had written for the council. It was 1 page long. It said simply, "All human operations in council space will end tomorrow. Thank you for 150 years of cooperation." He had not explained why humans were leaving. He had not listed their complaints. He had not asked for an apology. He had just said, "Goodbye." The aliens thought humans were emotional. They thought humans made everything too complicated. They preferred simple answers to complex problems. So Lee Hyun had given them the simplest answer of all. Outside his window, he could see the last human ships getting ready to leave. The cargo ship carried supplies for their new home. The research ship carried Dr. Park Soo-jin's laboratory. The engineering ship carried Kim Do-woo's tools and spare parts. And scattered throughout the fleet were the families, human children who had grown up in council space. Human adults who had spent their whole careers helping aliens. Human elderly who had watched the galaxy change over many decades. They were all going to the same place, a cluster of planets far from Council space, a place where humans could build something new, a place where their ideas would be welcomed instead of ignored. Engineer Kim Do-woo came to Lee Hyun's office. He looked tired but satisfied. "All systems are ready," he said. "The station will run itself for at least 20 years, maybe longer if they are careful." "And the other projects?" Lee Hyun asked. "The same. I left instruction manuals for everything, step-by-step directions. Even the Vorthons should be able to follow them." Kim Do-woo sat down in the chair across from Lee Hyun's desk. "Do you think they will miss us?" Lee Hyun was quiet for a moment. He thought about all the aliens he had worked with over the years. Some had been friends, some had been difficult, but most had just taken human help for granted. "They will miss what we do for them," he said finally. "But I don't think they will miss us." Dr. Park Soo-jin joined them in the office. She had finished packing her research. Her face looked peaceful now. The stress of the last few months was gone. "The biolabs are all set to automatic," she said. The experiments will continue without me. The Maloney will get their results." "And if they have questions?" Lee Hyun asked. "Then they will have to find the answers themselves, just like we did when we were starting out." The three humans sat together in the quiet office. Outside, the stars looked the same as always, but tomorrow those stars would seem different. Tomorrow they would be traveling toward a new home. Lee Hyun stood up and turned off his computer. He picked up his coffee cup and looked around the office one last time. This room had been his home for 15 years. He had solved hundreds of problems here. He had helped thousands of aliens. But he did not feel sad about leaving. He felt free. "Time to go," he said. The three humans walked out together. Behind them, the lights went out automatically. The doors locked themselves. The station began its long wait for someone who would never come back. In a few hours, alien crews would arrive to take over the station. They would find everything working perfectly. They would find detailed instructions for every system. They would find spare parts and backup equipment. What they would not find was anyone who cared enough to go beyond what was written in the manuals. But they would not realize that until much later. 6 months had passed since the humans left. Keth walked through the diplomatic station that used to buzz with activity. Now it felt empty, even though alien workers filled every room. The Vorthon administrator had been promoted after the human departure. The council said someone needed to take over human duties. Keth had been happy to accept the job. It seemed easy enough. Humans had left detailed instructions for everything. But small things kept going wrong. The air recycling system worked perfectly, but it used 20% more power than before. The water purification system cleaned everything properly, but it took twice as long. The food dispensers gave everyone what they ordered, but somehow the meals did not taste as good. Keth stared at his computer screen. Red warning lights blinked at him. The bio-research station on Maloney Prime was asking for help. Their main computer had stopped following its programming correctly. "The system is supposed to adjust the temperature every hour," the message read. "But now it only changes the temperature when something goes wrong. The plants in Section C are dying because it is too hot." Keth read through the instruction manual that engineer Kim Do-woo had left behind. The manual explained how the temperature system worked. It showed which buttons to press and which numbers to enter, but it did not explain why the computer had started acting differently. He sent a message back to Maloney Prime. "Follow the restart procedure on page 47 of the manual." 2 hours later, another message arrived. "We followed the restart procedure. The computer is working again, but now the humidity system is not responding correctly." Keth felt frustrated. How many more systems would break? How many more messages would he have to answer? The humans had made everything look so easy. On the research station, Dr. Zira was having her own problems. The Maloney scientist had been working with Dr. Park Soo-jin for 15 years. Together, They had discovered cures for 12 different diseases. They had developed new ways to grow food in space. They had learned how to help plants live in alien environments. But now Dr. Zira was working alone. She had all of Dr. Park Soo-jin's research files. She had access to all the same equipment. She had detailed notes about every experiment, yet somehow, nothing worked the way it should. Dr. Zira was trying to recreate an experiment that Dr. Park Soo-jin had done many times. The goal was to help Corvin grain grow in Thraxian soil. The procedure looked simple in the notes. Mix the soil with certain chemicals, add water at the right temperature, plant the seeds exactly 2 centimeters deep. But Dr. Zira had tried the experiment 12 times. Each time the plants died after a few days. She read through Dr. Park Soo-jin's notes again. Everything seemed clear. The measurements were exact. The timing was precise. But somewhere, something was wrong. Dr. Zira decided to watch the video, recordings of Dr. Park Soo-jin doing the same experiment. Maybe she could see something that was not written in the notes. She watched carefully as the human scientist mixed the soil. Dr. Park Soo-jin added the chemicals exactly as written. But then she did something that was not in the instructions. She picked up a handful of the mixed soil and squeezed it gently. She seemed to be testing how the soil felt in her hands. Dr. Zira tried to do the same thing. The soil felt fine to her, but maybe human hands could feel something that Maloney hands could not detect. She watched more of the video. Dr. Park Soo-jin added water to the soil. The note said to add exactly 200 milliliters, but in the video, Dr. Park Soo-jin added a little less. Then she stirred the soil and added a little more water. Then she stirred again and added just a few more drops. The note said, add 200 milliliters of water. But Dr. Park Soo-jin had really added water until the soil looked and felt right to her. Dr. Zira realized that the written instructions were not complete. Dr. Park Soo-jin had used her experience and intuition to make tiny adjustments. These adjustments were not in the notes because they seemed too obvious to write down. But without those adjustments, the experiment did not work. Meanwhile, on the border between Corvan and Deltan space, a small argument was growing into something bigger. A Corvan trade ship had accidentally entered Deltan territory. The Deltan patrol ship had demanded that the Corvan ship pay a fine before leaving. In the past, Captain Lee Hyun would have talked to both sides. He would have asked questions and listened to their complaints. He would have found a solution that made everyone happy. But Captain Lee Hyun was gone. The new mediator was a Thraxian named Nex. Commander Nex was very good at following rules. He knew all the laws about trade and territory. He could quote the exact regulations that applied to each situation. Commander Nex read the reports from both ships. According to Galactic Law Section 45 to C, ships that entered foreign territory without permission had to pay a fine. The law was clear. The Corvan ship had to pay, but the Corvan captain argued that his navigation computer had broken. He had not entered Deltan space on purpose. According to Galactic Law Section 23A, ships with equipment failures could ask for emergency assistance. Both sides were technically correct. Commander Nex spent 3 days reading law books and sending messages to legal experts. Finally, he made his decision. The Corvan ship had to pay half the fine. Neither side was happy with this solution. The Deltan patrol thought the fine was too small. The Corvan trader thought any fine was unfair, but they both accepted the decision because they had to follow galactic law. 2 weeks later, another Corvan ship had navigation problems near Deltan space. This time, the Deltan patrol was suspicious. They thought the Corvan ships were breaking their equipment on purpose to avoid paying fines. Commander Nex followed the same procedure. He read the law books and consulted the experts. He decided that this ship also had to pay half the fine. But now the Deltan patrol was angry. If Corvan ships could break their equipment and only pay half the fine, then the law meant nothing. They demanded that Commander Nex change his decision. Commander Nex refused. The law was the law. He had to apply the same rules to every case. The Deltan patrol sent a complaint to the Galactic Council. The Corvan Trade Union sent their own complaint. Both sides accused Commander Nex of being unfair. The council reviewed Commander Nex's decisions. Legally, he had done everything correctly. He had followed all the proper procedures. He had applied the law equally to both sides. But somehow both sides were more angry than before. Back on the diplomatic station, Keth was dealing with more problems. The automated food production system on Mining Station 7 had stopped working correctly. The mining robots on Asteroid Base 12 were moving 20% slower than usual. The communications array on Border Outpost 9 was producing strange static in all its transmissions. Each problem was small by itself. Each problem had a solution in the instruction manuals. But there were so many problems that Keth could not keep up with them all. He hired more assistants. He created new departments to handle different types of problems. He organized the alien workers into teams that specialized in specific systems. But the problems kept coming faster than they could be solved. Keth began to understand that the humans had not just been following instruction manuals. They had been preventing problems before they started. They had been making small adjustments and improvements every day. They had been watching for signs of trouble and fixing things before anyone else noticed. Now those small problems were adding up into bigger ones. The 3 colony worlds that Dr. Park Soo-jin had warned about were getting worse. The soil was so damaged that nothing could grow anymore. The water was becoming poisonous to drink. The air was starting to smell bad. The alien leaders finally admitted that Dr. Park Soo-jin had been right. But now it was too late for her solution. The planets were too damaged to heal naturally. The only choice was to evacuate everyone and find them new homes. Millions of aliens had to leave the worlds where their families had lived for generations. They had to abandon their farms and their businesses and their memories. As the refugee ships left the dying planets, some of the aliens remembered Dr. Park Soo-jin's warning. They remembered her simple solution that would have saved their worlds. But Dr. Park Soo-jin was gone and no one knew where to find her. 2 years had passed since the humans disappeared. The problems were no longer small. Keth sat in his office surrounded by reports of system failures. The engineering computers that Kim Do-woo had programmed were starting to break down. Not all, at once but slowly, one piece at a time. The problem was that the computers had been designed to learn and adapt. Kim Do-woo had taught them to recognize patterns and solve problems automatically. But now, without human guidance, they were learning the wrong things. On Mining Station 7, the computer had learned that slowing down the mining robots prevented mechanical breakdowns. This was true, but the computer had slowed them down so much that they barely moved at all. Production had dropped by 60%. On Asteroid Base 12, the computer had learned that using less power saved energy. So it had started turning off life support systems during shift changes. 3 workers had nearly suffocated before anyone figured out what was happening. On Border Outpost 9, the computer had learned that reducing communication traffic prevented overloads, so it had started blocking important messages and only allowing routine status reports through. Each computer was trying to solve problems, but they were creating bigger problems instead. Keth had tried to reprogram the computers using Kim Do-woo's instruction manuals, but the manuals only explained how to operate the systems. They did not explain how to think like Kim Do-woo. Dr. Zira was facing similar problems with her research. She had finally learned to recreate some of Dr. Park Soo-jin's experiments, but she could only repeat exactly what the human scientist had done before. When she tried to create new experiments, everything went wrong. The problem was that Dr. Zira did not understand why Dr. Park Soo-jin's methods worked. She could follow the steps, but she could not see the bigger picture. Dr. Park Soo-jin had understood how different alien biologies worked together. She had known which chemicals would help plants and which ones would hurt them. She had been able to predict how changing one thing would affect everything else. Dr. Zira was an expert on Maloney biology, but Dr. Park Soo-jin had been an expert on all biology. That knowledge had taken her 30 years to develop. Dr. Zira could not learn it from reading instruction manuals. The Maloney Science Council had started pressuring Dr. Zira to produce faster results. They wanted her to develop new medicines and improve food production just like Dr. Park Soo-jin had done. But Dr. Zira was spending all her time just trying to keep the existing experiments running. Every day something went wrong that she did not know how to fix. Meanwhile, the conflict between the Corvan and Delthan empires was getting worse. What had started as arguments about trade fines had grown into accusations of deliberate sabotage. The Delthan Patrol was now stopping every Corvan ship that came near their territory. They were demanding to inspect cargo and question crew members. They claimed they were looking for evidence of illegal activities. The Corvan trade union said this was harassment. They started sending military escorts with their trade ships. They said they were just protecting their rights. Commander Nex had tried to mediate the dispute using standard diplomatic procedures. He had organized meetings between both sides. He had proposed compromise solutions. He had quoted relevant laws and regulations. But both sides were too angry to listen to logic anymore. The Delthan representatives walked out of the meetings. The Corvan delegates refused to attend the next ones. Commander Nex reported the breakdown in negotiations to the Galactic Council. He recommended that the Council impose economic sanctions on both sides until they agreed to cooperate. But the Council was dealing with too many other problems to focus on this one conflict. 3 colony worlds had been evacuated. Mining production was down across the galaxy. Research projects were stalling everywhere. The Council sent a message to both sides telling them to work it out peacefully, but they did not send anyone to help make that happen. Without active mediation, the conflict continued to grow. Delthan patrol ships started following Corvan vessels even outside Delthan territory. Corvan military escorts began challenging any Delthan ship they encountered. Both sides were still following galactic law technically, but they were using the law as a weapon instead of a tool for cooperation. On the diplomatic station, Keth was discovering just how much work the humans had really been doing. He found files that showed Captain Lee Hyun had been personally involved in over 3,000 disputes during his last 5 years of service. Most of these disputes had been so small that they never made it into official reports. A misunderstanding between alien crew members, a problem with a supply delivery, a question about scheduling or protocol. Captain Lee Hyun had solved these problems quickly and quietly, usually with just a few messages or a brief conversation. He had prevented them from becoming bigger issues. But now those small problems were not being solved. They were building up like snow on a mountain, getting heavier and more dangerous every day. Keth tried to handle these problems the way Captain Lee Hyun had done. But he did not have the same skill at understanding what aliens were really thinking and feeling. When 2 species had an argument, Captain Lee Hyun had been able to see past their official complaints to the real issues underneath. He had known when someone was afraid, or frustrated, or just having a bad day. Keth could only respond to what aliens told him directly. When they said they were angry about trade regulations, he tried to fix the trade regulations. But often they were really angry about something completely different. A disturbing pattern was emerging across the galaxy. Everywhere humans had worked, things were slowly falling apart. The Thraxian military bases that had been jointly operated with humans were less efficient than before. Crime rates were rising on planets where human peacekeepers had worked alongside local security forces. Trade agreements that humans had helped negotiate were being interpreted differently by different sides. Even worse, new problems were appearing that no one knew how to solve. Strange diseases were affecting crops on several planets. Communications between some alien species were breaking down over cultural misunderstandings. Ancient territorial disputes that had been settled for decades were flaring up again. The aliens tried to solve these problems using their traditional methods. The Vorthons created new regulations and procedures. The Maloney formed research committees to study the issues. The Thraxians proposed military solutions. But none of these approaches worked the way they used to. Without humans to bridge the gaps between different ways of thinking, each species was becoming more isolated and suspicious of the others. The first open conflict finally erupted in the mining system of Kepler 442. A Delthan patrol ship fired warning shots at a Corvan transport that refused to stop for inspection. The Corvan military escort fired back, claiming they were defending against an unprovoked attack. Both sides called for backup. Within hours, a dozen ships from each fleet were facing each other across empty space. Each side demanded that the other surrender and accept responsibility for starting the fight. Commander Nex received emergency messages from both fleets. Each side wanted him to confirm that they were in the right and order the other side to withdraw. But Commander Nex could not take sides without making the situation worse. According to galactic law, both sides had acted within their rights. The Delthan ship was authorized to request inspections. The Corvin ship was authorized to refuse. The escort ships were authorized to defend themselves. Commander Nex sent identical messages to both fleets. Return to your home territories immediately. The Galactic Council will investigate this incident and determine appropriate responses. Neither side obeyed. The Delthan commander said he would not leave until the Corvin ships surrendered. The Corvin commander said she would not leave until the Delthan ships apologized. For 3 days, the two fleets stared at each other across space. Both sides reinforced their positions. Both sides prepared for battle. On the 4th day, a single shot from an unknown source hit one of the Delthan ships. In the confusion and anger that followed, both fleets opened fire. The Battle of Kepler 442 lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 4 ships had been destroyed and hundreds of aliens were dead. It was the first major war in Council space in over 80 years. As news of the battle spread across the galaxy, many aliens found themselves thinking the same thing. This would never have happened if the humans were still here. But the humans were gone and no one knew how to find them. 5 years had passed since the humans left. The galaxy was a different place now, and not in a good way. Keth stood in the council chambers, delivering his report to the assembled representatives. His voice was tired, and his hands shook slightly as he read from his notes. The comprehensive analysis is complete, he said. We have reviewed all council activities for the past 150 years. The results are difficult to accept. He paused and looked around the room. Representatives from dozens of alien species sat in the curved seats that had once included human delegates. Where the human section used to be, there was now just empty space. Humans were directly involved in 67% of all successful council initiatives, Keth continued. They participated in 91% of all diplomatic solutions. They contributed to 100% of our major technological breakthroughs. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. These numbers were worse than anyone had expected. But the analysis shows something even more significant, Keth said. In cases where humans were not directly involved, their indirect influence was present in 84% of successful outcomes. Other species were using human-developed methods, human-trained personnel, or human-designed systems. The Corvin representative stood up. Are you saying that we accomplished nothing without human help? Keth looked down at his notes. He had dreaded this question, but he had to answer honestly. I am saying that human influence was so widespread and so deeply integrated into our civilization that we did not recognize it while it was happening. We thought we were working together as equals. In reality, humans were holding everything together. Dr. Zira was not at the council meeting. She was in her laboratory, staring at a wall covered with photographs. Every picture showed her working alongside Dr. Park Soo-jin. In some photos, they were celebrating a successful experiment. In others, they were puzzling over a difficult problem. Dr. Zira had found these photos while cleaning out old storage files. She had forgotten that so many pictures existed. Looking at them now, she could see things that she had missed at the time. In every photo, Dr. Park Soo-jin was teaching her something. Not directly, but through example. The way she held her tools. The way she organized her workspace. The way she approached each problem with curiosity instead of frustration. Dr. Zira realized that she had learned more from watching Dr. Park Soo-jin work than from all her formal education combined. But she had not appreciated this learning while it was happening. She had thought she was just watching a colleague do routine tasks. Now she understood that those routine tasks had actually been masterful demonstrations of scientific thinking. Dr. Park Soo-jin had been sharing 30 years of experience through thousands of small actions and decisions, but the learning had been so gradual and so natural that Dr. Zira had not recognized it as teaching. She picked up one particular photo. It showed both scientists working late at night on a problem that had puzzled them for weeks. Dr. Zira remembered feeling frustrated and ready to give up. But Dr. Park Soo-jin had suggested they try one more approach. Sometimes the answer is not in the data, Dr. Park Soo-jin had said. Sometimes the answer is in asking a different question. At the time, Dr. Zira had thought this was just a nice way of saying, keep trying. But now she realized it was a fundamental insight about how scientific discovery really worked. Dr. Park Soo-jin had not just been a researcher. She had been a teacher, a mentor, and a friend, and Dr. Zira had lost all three when the humans left. Commander. Nex was reading casualty reports from the latest skirmish between Corvin and Delthan forces. The conflict that had started at Kepler 442 was now spread across 12 star systems. Both sides had called in allies. What had begun as a trade dispute was turning into a full-scale war. Nex had tried everything he could think of to stop the fighting. He had proposed ceasefires, prisoner exchanges, and neutral meeting zones. He had offered to mediate peace talks and suggested compromise solutions, but neither side trusted him anymore. The Corvin leaders said he was biased toward the Delthan. The Delthan commanders said he favored the Corvin. Both sides wanted a different mediator. The problem was that there was no one else. The other alien species were all taking sides in the conflict. The ones who remained neutral lacked the skills to handle complex negotiations. Nex found himself thinking about Captain Lee Hyun more and more often. He remembered watching the human captain work during previous crises. Lee Hyun had never seemed to take sides, but somehow he had always found solutions that satisfied everyone. Nex had studied recordings of Lee Hyun's negotiations, trying to understand his methods, but the recordings only showed what Lee Hyun had said, not how he had decided what to say. The human captain had seemed to understand what each side really wanted, even when they could not express it clearly themselves. He had known when to push for compromise and when to give people time to think. He had sensed when someone was afraid or angry or confused, and he had responded to their emotions as much as their words. Nex could analyze legal documents and military regulations, but he could not read hearts and minds the way Lee Hyun had done. Back at the diplomatic station, Keth was going through personnel files that he had never seen before. These files contained personal evaluations that Captain Lee Hyun had written about alien staff members. Keth found his own file and opened it with curiosity. What he read surprised him. Keth is highly capable and dedicated, Lee Hyun had written. He follows procedures carefully and takes pride in doing things correctly. His attention to detail is excellent. However, he tends to focus on immediate tasks and may miss larger patterns. He would benefit from opportunities to see how individual problems connect to broader issues. Lee Hyun had recommended that Keth be given cross-training in other departments. He had suggested that Keth attend strategy meetings and participate in long-term planning sessions. But these recommendations had never been implemented. The alien administrators had thought Lee Hyun was just being nice to his staff. They had not realized he was trying to prepare aliens to take over human responsibilities. Keth found other files that revealed similar patterns. Lee Hyun had written detailed development plans for dozens of alien workers. He had identified their strengths and weaknesses. He had suggested specific training that would help them grow into larger roles. If these recommendations had been followed, the aliens might have been better prepared when the humans left. But no one had paid attention to Lee Hyun's personnel management. They had only cared about his immediate results. The most shocking discovery came when Keth accessed the human personal message archives. These files had been locked since the human departure, but Keth finally had authorization to review them. He found thousands of private messages between human staff members, messages that revealed how much extra work they had been doing. Engineer Kim Do-woo had been secretly maintaining systems that were supposed to be maintained by alien crews. When alien engineers could not solve a problem, they would ask Kim Do-woo for advice. But the advice usually meant that Kim Do-woo did the work himself and then explained the solution. Dr. Park Soo-jin had been tutoring alien scientists in her spare time. She had been reviewing their research proposals, correcting their experimental designs, and helping them interpret their results. But she had done this informally, so it never appeared in any official records. Captain Lee Hyun had been handling diplomatic problems, that were supposed to be resolved by alien mediators. When aliens encountered situations they could not handle, they would ask Lee Hyun to consult on the case. But the consultation usually meant that Lee Hyun took over the entire negotiation. The humans had been working double shifts for years. They had been doing their own jobs plus covering for aliens who were not ready to handle complex responsibilities. But they had done this so quietly and so smoothly that no one had realized it was happening. Keth found one message that made him sit down hard in his chair. It was from Kim Do-woo to his daughter Kim So-young, who had been working at a different station. The fusion reactor maintenance was supposed to be handled by the Vorthen engineering team, Kim Do-woo had written, but they made 3 serious mistakes that could have caused an explosion. I had to fix everything and then train them to do it correctly. Again. This happens almost every week now. The aliens are good people, but they are not ready to handle these systems on their own. I am worried about what will happen when we leave. Kim So-young had replied, maybe we should not leave yet. Maybe we should stay and keep training them until they are ready. Kim Do-woo had written back, we have been trying to train them for 20 years. They learn the specific tasks we teach them, but they do not learn to think like engineers. They follow instructions, but they cannot solve new problems. I think the only way they will learn is if we are not here to help them. They need to make their own mistakes and find their own solutions. Reading this exchange, Keth finally understood what had really happened. The humans had not abandoned the galaxy in anger or frustration. They had left because they believed it was the only way to force the other species to become truly independent. But the cost of that independence was turning out to be much higher than anyone had expected. 10 years had passed since the humans disappeared. The galaxy had learned to function without them, but it was a colder, lonelier place. Keth walked through the memorial wing of the diplomatic station. The rooms where humans had once worked were now preserved exactly as they had left them. Captain Lee Hyun's office still had his coffee cup on the desk. Dr. Park Soo-jin's laboratory still had her notes pinned to the walls. Engineer Kim Do-woo's workshop still had his tools arranged in neat rows. Alien visitors came here every day. They would stand quietly in the doorways, looking at these empty spaces. Some would leave flowers or small gifts. Others would just touch the walls as if hoping to feel some echo of the humans who had worked there. Keth had become the galaxy's leading expert on human methods. He had studied every recording, read every manual, and analyzed every decision the humans had made. Other aliens came to him for advice on how to solve problems the human way. But Keth knew he was just copying techniques he did not fully understand. He could follow human procedures, but he could not think with human wisdom. The memorial wing had become a place of pilgrimage. Alien children came here on school trips to learn about the time when humans were part of galactic civilization. Their teachers would tell them stories about human kindness and creativity, but the children had trouble believing the stories. To them, humans seemed like mythical beings, too good to be real. Dr. Zira no longer worked in the research laboratories. After 8 years of trying to continue Dr. Park Soo-jin's work, she had finally admitted defeat. She now taught at the Galactic University, offering courses on human scientific methods and cross-species research techniques. Her students were eager to learn, but they struggled with concepts that had come naturally to humans. They could memorize the steps of human experimental procedures, but they could not capture the intuition that had made those procedures effective. Dr. Zira often found herself crying during lectures. She would be explaining one of Dr. Park Soo-jin's discoveries, and suddenly she would remember her friend's excitement when they had made that breakthrough together. Dr. Park Soo-jin believed that every failed experiment was teaching us something important, Dr. Zira would tell her students. She said that the universe was always trying to show us new truths, but we had to be patient enough to listen, though students would take careful notes, but Dr. Zira could see that they did not really understand. They thought of failed experiments as waste of time and resources. They did not have the human ability to find hope in disappointment. Commander Nex had been promoted to head of galactic security after successfully ending the Corvin-Deltan War, but his success had come at a terrible cost. Unable to negotiate a peaceful solution, Nex had finally recommended military intervention. The Galactic Council had sent peacekeeping forces to separate the warring fleets. The fighting had stopped, but only because both sides were too exhausted to continue. The peace treaty that ended the war was nothing like the elegant solutions that Captain Lee Hyun used to create. Instead of addressing the underlying causes of the conflict, it simply drew new boundaries and imposed strict penalties for future violations. Both the Corvan and Delthan empires felt defeated and resentful. They followed the peace treaty because they had to, not because they believed it was fair. Nex knew that this was not real peace. It was just a pause in the fighting. The anger and mistrust were still there, hidden beneath the surface. He had tried to study Captain Lee Hyun's methods for building lasting peace, but Lee Hyun's approach had depended on understanding what each side truly wanted and finding ways to give everyone at least part of what they needed. Nex could enforce rules, but he could not heal hearts. The search for humanity had continued for 10 years without success. The Galactic Council had sent exploration ships to every corner of known space. They had followed every possible clue and investigated every strange signal. But the humans had covered their tracks perfectly. They had left no trail to follow and no hints about their destination. Some aliens believed that humans had traveled beyond the galaxy entirely. Others thought they had found a way to hide in empty space between the stars. A few even suggested that humans had discovered how to travel to different dimensions. The truth was simpler and more painful. The humans were still in the galaxy, but they had chosen not to be found. Deep space monitoring stations had detected signs of human activity near the galactic rim, energy signatures that matched human technology, communication patterns that followed human protocols. But whenever investigation ships arrived at these locations, they found nothing. The humans were watching, but they were not ready to return. One day, a message arrived at the diplomatic station. It was transmitted on an old human frequency that had not been used for years. The message was brief and unsigned. "We know you have been looking for us. We see what has happened since we left. We are sorry for your pain, but we cannot come back to fix things for you. You must learn to fix them yourselves. We remember our friends with love. Dr. Zira, your research on plant genetics is groundbreaking. Keep following your instincts. Commander Nex, peace is more than the absence of war. Look for what people share, not what divides them. Keth, you have grown into a wise leader. Trust yourself more. We will return when the galaxy no longer needs us to solve its problems. We will return when we can be partners instead of caretakers. Until then, we are here if you truly need us. But please try to need us less." The message included coordinates for a single meeting point far from any inhabited system. The coordinates would be valid for 1 month, then never again. The Galactic Council debated for weeks about who should go to the meeting point. Some wanted to send a large delegation to show respect. Others suggested sending military ships to demand that humans return. In the end, they decided to send just 3 representatives: Keth, Dr. Zira, and Commander Nex. The 3 aliens traveled to the meeting point in a small diplomatic ship. When they arrived, they found a single human vessel waiting for them. Captain Lee Hyun came aboard their ship. He looked older but healthy. His smile was warm but sad. "It is good to see you," he said. "All of you have done well with very difficult circumstances." Dr. Zira started crying immediately. She had not realized how much she had missed her human colleagues until she saw one again. "Why did you leave us?" she asked. Lee Hyun sat down across from them. "Because we loved you too much to let you stay dependent on us forever. You needed to learn that you could solve problems on your own. But so many people died," Commander Nex said. "The war could have been prevented if you had stayed." "Yes," Lee Hyun agreed. "Some suffering could have been prevented, but it would have happened eventually, and it would have been worse if you had never learned to handle conflict yourselves." "We are still not as good as humans were," Keth said. "You are not supposed to be like humans," Lee Hyun replied. "You are supposed to be like yourselves, but stronger and wiser than before." He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars looked the same as always. "We have been watching," he said. "We have seen aliens working together in ways they Never did when we were there. We have seen new solutions to old problems. We have seen creativity and compassion that existed all along but was hidden behind human assistance. The galaxy is not the same without humans, Dr. Zira said. No, Li Hyun agreed. It is better in some ways and worse in others. That is what growing up means. He turned back to face them. We will come back someday, but not as your teachers or your problem solvers. We will come back as your equals, when you no longer need us to be anything else. The meeting lasted only an hour. Captain Li Hyun gave them small gifts to take back to the galaxy. New medical techniques, improved engineering, designs and diplomatic protocols that had been developed in human exile. But he made it clear that these were final gifts. Humans would not provide any more help until the galaxy learned to help itself. As the human ship prepared to leave, Dr. Zira asked one last question. Do you miss us? Captain Li Hyun smiled, and for a moment his sadness showed through. Every day, he said. But missing someone and needing someone are different things. We miss you because we love you, but you no longer need us because you have grown strong. After the human ship disappeared into hyperspace, the three aliens sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Keth spoke. He's right, you know. We are stronger than we were. But we are also lonelier, Dr. Zira said. Yes, Commander Nex agreed. But maybe that is part of growing up too. They returned to the galaxy with their gifts and their message. The news that humans were alive and well brought comfort to many aliens. But it also brought sadness because it confirmed that humans had chosen to stay away. Years passed. The galaxy continued to heal and grow. Conflicts still arose, but they were resolved more quickly and more fairly than before. Research progressed more slowly than in the human era, but it progressed more independently. Children grew up hearing stories about the time when humans lived among the stars. Some of these children dedicated their lives to preparing for the day when humans would return. They learned human languages and studied human culture. They practiced human values of cooperation and empathy. They worked to make the galaxy the kind of place where humans would want to live again.